Want to know my favourite Soulsborne game? Well, I'm not going to tell you. Instead, let's see my 10 favourite Souls-like games. Bring up the title card. So Lords of the Fallen has everything that makes a Souls game special. A diverse array of great and gruesome weapons? Check. Towering bosses that will turn you into a splattery, pulpy mess? Oh, you better bloody believe it. If your expectations are middle of the road, then this'll do. But it's not very interesting. Granted, that's not the most positive review of a game I can give, but at least it's honest. The series is going to get a reimagining, and it looks much better the second time around. Maybe once that's out, it'll do a bit better than number 10. Steel Rising puts you in a period not many games tend to deal with. The French Revolution. Developers don't usually choose that period of history because, well, frankly, it's a bit boring. Well, I thought it was. But apparently King Louis XIV had an army of robotic henchmen to quell his rowdy countrymen. But the revolution happened because those bad robots all got stopped by an even more advanced robot, which is what you play as. So anyway, robots, history, France, weapons, someone who dances people to death. If you like at least 3 out of 5 of those things, this is the game for you. Even the anime lot have had a stab at From Software's winning formula and created this, Codevein. It's everything you'd expect it to be. It's got complex, sprawling levels, threatening, aggressive enemies, and massive swords wielded by buxom anime ladies. If you were playing Dark Souls and thought, boy, I wish this was slightly more erotic,
I want to know more.
Good news. Codevein is the game you were hoping for. Truth be told, it's a very solid game. There's a lot of depth, the enemy and world design are interesting and intriguing, and yes, it's a bit silly, but come on now. We both know you and I aren't above something like this. It's not all knights and dragons and maidens in distress in this genre. Some of you might prefer wearing a mechanical exoskeleton and having chainsaws for hands. Some of you might prefer the Surge. The game has a great progression and crafting system that involves taking said severed limbs and empowering yourself with them until you're an all-powerful mess of flesh and metal that would make Megatron squeal in fear like he's a 90s modem. Also, it's got a sequel, so if one bout of mecha stomping ain't quite enough for you, there's a whole nother game to get your greedy little chompers into. Hey, look at this! 2-dimensional! Yeah, it's like 3D but only 2 of the Ds. Am I blowing your mind or what? Well, not me. Me and Sultan Sanctuary. Taking a heavy dose of inspiration from old Metroidvania country, this game blends it all together to make something that might feel lighter on the surface, but after several hours of getting bodied, squashed, and mauled, you'll realize it has just as much depth as any of the heavy hitters. Here's something for all of you who always wanted Dark Souls, but with guns. Not like Bloodborne. Nothing like Bloodborne, oh, obviously. This is Remnant from the Ashes. No old-timey grandpa guns here, no. We're packing some real firepower. So, you'll face off against an infinite horde of interdimensional nasties up to no good. Will you delve into the mysteries of magic, or use guile and subtlety to overcome your problems? No, obviously not, because you've got a gun! Several of them, why aren't you listening? The monsters are big, the fights are bigger, and the game is a solid pick if you're looking to stray off the beaten path with a big old gun. If you're looking for a game that has as much style and substance as it does gruesome, spine-chingling nasties, I couldn't decide between tingling and chilling, so I went with chingling, then play Blasphemous. Despite having 1 dimension less than other games in the genre, it still somehow managed to be the bloodiest. It's on par with Bloodborne with its grim, dark grossness, which is actually pretty remarkable. I can't think of another game that has such a high gore to pixel ratio. It's a story of survival in a world gone mad from twisted maniacal religion. and you're fighting against the Holy Order like a Norwegian black metal band in the 80s. It's honestly quite a special little game, but also thoroughly bonkers. In this genre, those two factors equals a winner. You also have a great big cone on your head. Don't know if that's a pro or a con, it's actually a cone. You know what I find fun? Plague doctors. That's the kind of medical profession I can get behind. Leeches, bleeding patients, fun masks. I don't find the beak threatening, I find it comforting. So a game all about chaps like this is Thymesia. You rampage around doing the opposite of your Hippocratic oath and deadening everything in your path, all with the awesome destruction of your trademark plague power. So that's the whole thing with this game. You play as the enigmatic Corvus. You're tasked with stopping death, which has gripped the mythical kingdom of Hermes. It may not be as sprawling as the From Software games, but it's a very tight package. The world's intriguing, the combat satisfying, the character development is unique. It's a solid game. I just wish they made more games about plague doctors. It just seems like money being left on the table not to. And now a familiar sight for pretty much everyone. Star Wars. Yes, I know, as a whole, Star Wars games have been a little bit hit or miss, but one that absolutely nailed it is Jedi Fallen Order. This was the game that fans always wanted. Well, I did anyway, and I hope you don't mind if I speak for the whole fan base, if not the world. It has a unique story, fleshes out aspects of the world that were previously glossed over, and it looks exceptional. Not to mention, the gameplay is brilliant. It's brutal, challenging, and most importantly, rewarding. Yes, some of you may be pulling a rulebook out and challenging the definition of a Soulslike, but I think this checks enough boxes to fall into the category. The whole term, Soulslike, is very broad. It's like a social construct. No one really knows what it means, but we all pretend we do. And anyway, we're not here to fight, we're here to talk about good games, and this is certainly that. It's refreshing to take the genre out of dark, grimy medieval fantasy and inject it with a little bit of sci-fi goodness. It's a combination you wouldn't think would work, but it does. Fans of the genre, and fans of Star Wars, rejoice and embrace. You're friends now. Our number one spot goes to Nioh. Like Fallen Order, you may want to throw the book at me, arguing that this isn't a true Souls-like, but I reckon it is. At first glance, they may feel like very different games, but scratch the surface and you'll find similarities, and you'll also see the influences. One thing that it definitely has in common is the difficulty factor. From Software games are tough, like unfairly, unforgivingly so. Nioh doesn't just meet that difficulty factor, but it makes the likes of Dark Souls seem, well, actually very manageable. If the thing that draws you to this style of game is difficulty, if you crave challenge and just love the feeling of being beaten down time and again because you secretly hate yourself and enjoy the masochistic failure of dying for 4 hours straight, then Nioh is perfect. It's just a great game. Well, games. There are two of them. And they're both a blast to play, have a vivid, interesting world steeped in Japanese folklore, and are just a little bit mad. But let's face it, all the best games are. And that's it. Some titles to get your teeth into if you enjoyed yourself a bit of Dark Souls or Elden Ring. If none of these cut it, by all means turn your nose up at them. I didn't promise you'd love them. My job here is to just give you the choice. It's up to you whether you take it or not. Until next time, good night!